Hello, I'm Christine Roman, and this is Roman on CVI. Today I'd like to dig a little deeper into one of the CVI characteristics. The 10 characteristics that are the visual and behavioral kind of markers of children with CVI are, I think, pretty well recognized by many people now. Unfortunately, they're not always well understood in terms of the depth and breadth of that characteristic. The characteristic of visual novelty is one that people seem to have um, even more difficulty with than some of the others. The characteristic of novelty is not simply whether or not the child will look at things they haven't seen before. It's much, much bigger. The characteristic of visual novelty includes issues related to visual curiosity, issues of being able to truly interpret what is seen based on previous visual learning and previous visual experiences. This is the characteristic that I think really requires the most intentionality and depth of thinking on the part of all of us who are providers. I want to say a couple things about novelty as well. When I first started doing this work, I too thought visual novelty. When I noticed that children with CVI seemed to be really much more visually attached to things they'd seen over and over and over, but the new things might not even be acknowledged. Parents would say things like, we had a birthday party, but he doesn't seem very interested in any of the new things he got. On the other hand, he's still gravitates toward his favorite toy all the time. That's novelty. That's this very difficult characteristic. So what's the deal here? What's the problem? Well, novelty, I think, really addresses the core issue for individuals with CVI who may perceive the world. They see this information out there. They see this kaleidoscope, as it were, but they can't interpret it. And they can't interpret it because they have not built those visual schemes from which they can compare new information. The reason they haven't built those schemes has everything to do with the whole set of characteristics impacting the child all the time. But novelty is one in which, sadly, a lot of people think that because the student with CVI is not kind of visually scanning the room, doesn't seem to notice when somebody new walks in the door, might not be very excited about a new book that the teacher's trying to show to the class. And this has nothing to do with the cognitive capacity of a child. This characteristic is one in which the child with CVI just simply does not know how to interpret this new piece of information. So how do we fix that? What do we do to help a child with CVI? Well, when I really thought about this for a long time, I thought, well, how do I know when I see something new? And it occurred to me that I have this deeply embedded set of content, pieces of information from which I can compare the new experience to one I've had before. And there are these salient visual features, these key elements that confirm for me that what I'm seeing is a spoon or, a can of soda or a tire wheel, whatever it is, because they all have their own saliency. Children with CVI don't gather this salient visual information without our help. They tend not to be able to gather it incidentally. Rather, we have to directly and purposefully teach this to students as part of their program. When do we do this? We can start it when the child with CVI is an infant, because even infants, even those individuals who are also in phase 1, certainly have the right to receive the receptive language associated with a particular target or object. And that information can, of course, be applied as that child gets higher on the range, can be applied for other much deeper purposes. But we shouldn't wait. We should at least offer this information receptively. So let's talk a little bit more about these salient features. Salient visual features are 2, no more than 3, elements of a target that are always true or almost always true of that target. Obviously, not everything can be defined by salient features, but many things can. And what's even more important that if we do our job correctly, the instruction around salient features will transcend the target and begin to infuse in that child a metacognitive framework so that they too don't need to be dependent upon us all the time, but over a long period of time may encounter a new target, pause, recognize something about that target, have an aha moment, and say, well, I've never seen that elephant before, but it does have giant ears and a trunk. That's an elephant. Okay, so this connection really for this child between cognition and vision is never more apparent than through this characteristic. And I want to mention something else about salient features, and that is that folks have come to think that salient features should be taught as like a direct lesson. They certainly can be assessed directly, and there are lots of techniques to use to do that. But when it comes to instruction in salient features, my suggestion is that we kind of follow the child's lead, follow the curriculum or the instructional, targeted items, and apply the instruction of salient features directly to those things that are being asked of the child every day. Or if the child's very young, we want to use salient features for the target items that the child might be motivated to look for, to reach for, to play with. Their bottle, a toy, their if they're older, their toothbrush, their spoon, things that are part of their everyday life. Again, I do not recommend that salient features be a random set of 8 to 10 items from which your direct instruction will occur. I also want to mention that salient features can also be evaluated by people like Matt Tejan, who's done the 2D picture inventory. But don't confuse that inventory, that wonderful tool that we have, with instruction itself. So that inventory is a way to evaluate a child's baseline and then how they do after you provide instruction in salient features. That's all for right now. Our next session will include a little more content about salient features and some information about how comparative thought, comparative language is such a close partner with this concept of saliency. Thank you.